everyone. Good morning from my side and good afternoon from Ghana too as well. You're welcome to the Language Seminar 2.1. This is the first language seminar that we are having in 2025. We've had, I think, two previous ones in 2024. Where we looked at the first one was Can I Be Fluent? And then the second one was on the use of social media or the role of social media in language learning. And today we are going to talk about the things that every beginner language learner should know before learning a language. So before we start, mostly we start with a prayer where someone will pray in their target language. So if anyone can do that, we can begin. In whatever language you are learning or
No atrapé.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think Matteo is doing that for us.
Okay. Padre nuestro en el suelo, let's pray. Oramos. Padre nuestro en el suelo, te agradecemos por este día, por la misericordia que has tenido en nuestra vida. Por favor, Señor, como que vamos a empezar esta reunión, pedimos que nos guíen, nos dan la sabiduría en lo que vamos a hacer y que nos den la fuerza para hacerlo en perfección. En nombre de su Hijo, Jesucristo, hemos orado. Amén.
Amen. Muchas gracias por la oración.
Nada.
So for those who didn't understand the prayer, he prayed that God should guide us and also to give us the wisdom for this meeting. Sorry. Yes, so all right. So quickly we will delve into what we are talking about for today. As I said, the topic is what I wish every beginner language learner knew. This does not only apply to beginners, of course, it cuts across every language learner. And I'm very happy to have, I'm going to just introduce our guests for today. And first of all, we have Matteo. When I mention your name, and then I'll first of all mention their name, and they'll give us a little intro about themselves. So we have Matteo Totime with us. We also have Emmanuella Adarkwa. We have Richland Antiri. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing the name well. And then we have Abdul-Nasir Habib on the panel. So we will start with Matteo Totime. He will tell us who he is, what he has been up to. I've known Matteo back on campus when he was the president of the Spanish club. Yeah, very vibrant. He's always, all around, a friend of all. So, Matteo, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Matteo Totime. I'm currently doing the master program in Spanish language teaching at the University of Missouri. I am interested in education, culture, and also languages. I really love languages. Yeah, so here we are. Great masters and about to be done. So nice to meet you all, and I hope to inspire some people here. Oh, I hope to inspire everyone at the end of this meeting. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much for accepting to share your knowledge with us. Matteo is a very knowledgeable person. Those who know Matteo, they know him back in the days. Yeah, so we are very happy to have you here. Some people are laughing. Those who know you, they are laughing. He was also a teaching assistant, I think the year before our year. Yeah, if that's right. Yeah. Okay. The next person is Emmanuella Adarkwa. So Emmanuella Adarkwa will introduce herself, and then I'll also see what I can say about her.
Okay,
You would
so
have been
thank you
glad to
very
see your
much.
face, though.
Oh, Hetty. Okay, so my name is Emmanuella Adarkwa, and then I'm a language enthusiast, let me say, specifically for now. I'm focusing on the French language, and I am currently a private tutor. And yes, I love languages, and then I always want to learn, about languages. So yeah, basically that is it. I was also a teaching assistant at the University of Ghana French department for the 2023-2024 academic year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emmanuella, for joining us. So Emmanuella has been a good friend. I think we started together, but I ended up ending before her. That's how those in the language department at the University of Ghana, they understand this language. So she was a teaching assistant, as she said, for a year in the Spanish section, because she had the privilege of going to Benin, whereas those who didn't get the privilege, we had to continue with our lives. So, and she has been very helpful. She was part of the conception of B-Proficient and giving her input, her advice, and that is how come we are where we are today. So thank you very much, Emmanuella, for being on today's program. We are so glad to have you to share your knowledge with us. Thank you. Next, we have Richland. Richland, I don't know how to pronounce your surname. So Richland was my mate, and he will tell us something about himself.
Okay, so it's Antiri. It's
Antiri.
Richland Antiri. Yes, I'm Richland Antiri. I'm also currently in the University of Missouri, Columbia, pursuing my master's degree in literature, Spanish literature. And I was also a teaching assistant a few years ago in the University of Ghana. So that's how I met Hetty. Basically, we're all here to, provide our inputs and hopefully inspire other people in their language journey.
Thank you very much. We're happy to have you, Richland. Richland was one of those students that when they speak Spanish, you question yourself whether you're also a Spanish student. Yeah, he's very, very fluent and very knowledgeable. He also, I served with him for a year as a teaching assistant at the University of Ghana. We are so glad to have you here, Richland. And the last person who has also been a spearheader for the language seminar, been helping B-Proficient and giving his advice, inputs. That's Abdul-Nasir Habib. We've had him on the program twice. This is his third time, and hopefully he will continue to have time to be with us. So we will give him the platform to introduce himself once again.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are listening from. They call me Habib, but my name is Abdul-Nasir. But many people do not know Abdul-Nasir, so just Habib is fine. We are mates with Richland. Matteo was my classmate then, because of year abroad, graduated. So we are all mates, and I worked with Hetty, with Richland as TAs at the Spanish section. Right now, I'm also in the States, pursuing a master's in Spanish at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. That's how far we've come, and I hope that today we are going to have a lovely session.
Thank you so much, Habib. Thank you so much for always making time to be with us. He's one of the brains behind the language seminar, helping with his input, advice, and all that. He was also one of the students that you always question that, hey, Charlie, are you in this program at all? He and Richland, they were our fathers, They went for year abroad and came back to meet those of us who stayed in Ghana to take care of their parents for them. So we are so happy to have you here, and we hope to have a nice time with you all panelists. Thank you so much. So we'll delve right into some questions for today. Let me start with your experiences as teaching assistants. When I read the survey, some people said they wanted to know how it felt like. So I want to ask, as teaching assistants, you all have taught beginners, especially level 100s, when they come fresh, you have taught them, you know how the journey is from the beginning, and you know how things are. So what do you wish every beginner language learner should know even before they start their language journey? I'll throw this question to Richland.
Well, I think what they should know especially as university students, is language is a build-up. So mostly when they get to the university, in the University of Ghana, for example, they just learn something for a semester and just forget about it the next semester and move on. So most of them have that mindset still in their mind that they are just going to learn for the semester. Language is a build-up. You need what you learned last semester and you need what you learned the first year and the second year. So you just keep building up. And that's one thing I always tell my students to keep in mind, because if you forget the basics, you will not be able to continue. You will have to go back and revise everything. So that's one of the main things I try to, tell them every time and try to remind them of that. You always have to remember, if you forget something, you have to revise because you always need it for the next stage.
That's very, 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 very true. And I agree 100% with that. Language is a build-up. And mostly, we also don't even take the notes. We don't take it properly. You write in one note, you throw it somewhere, and then you go to the next class, you realize you need your previous notes. So that's very true. What do you have to say about that too, Matteo? I can see Sabrina here. Hi, Sabrina. It's been so long. Hi.
I actually wanted to comment that it's nice to see some really familiar people, Dorcas,
Yeah.
Joanna, Persia too. It's so nice, and I mean, the little I would ask first of all before you learn a language, ask yourself, are you willing? You ask it. So normally, just ask yourself, are you willing to put in the work? If your answer is yes, are you willing to, you know, come with the challenge? So if you are able to answer this question, then I mean you're on a good path to, start the language learning. And yeah, I think for every beginner, in order to learn a language, just make sure, just like how Richland said, it is a build up. Make sure that you know anything you're doing. No, it is a language, it is not math. So find a way. The main thing should be you should be able to communicate. So all I tell my student most of the time is, at the end of this course, are you sure? Let's say if you're just kidnapped and dropped in somewhere like Mexico, or let's say any country, would you be able to survive? So just think about it in a fun way, and just make up your mind to put in the work. So basically that is it.
That's very true. Are you willing? I would ask a follow-up on that, whether the person is willing or not. We know some people, they just have heck. That's something that has come up. I'm sorry, I'm talking in terms of University of Ghana. I'll expand the borders very soon. We are starting small and we will expand. For those not only at the University of Ghana, let's say they enter into the university, they have to take Spanish. It's either a requirement that they have to take, or they were just given the course and they ended up just being there. So in that case where the person does not really have the willingness to learn, what happens to the person? Does that make them unqualified to learn a language at that point?
Okay, well, thank you for the follow-up question. Well, mostly, I went for a conference recently, and I gained one perspective to language learning. So mostly when students are being asked, oh, why should I learn a second language? I mean, the most common answer would be, oh, you can get a good job and whatnot. But what happens if the person is not interested in working? They just want to do business, or do their own personal things that doesn't require higher education or not. But one thing I can say is that with language learning, with English, sometimes it gets to a point where certain ideologies, certain things said in, let's say, Spanish, French, or what have you, cannot, even in tree, when you want to translate something from tree to English, it loses certain niches, it loses it. So you learning the new language allows you to see more perspective, allows you to, learn and understand how things work. And basically, you can just say learning a new language helps you to become a better person. Because, let's say, for example, let's say, oh, your family people will kill you if you do this. An African will laugh at this. But also when you bring it to the context of, English or Spanish, it doesn't really translate well. The very niche behind that very phrase might be lost, and it might be taken differently. So just learning the language allows us to become better humans in general. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much for that. Learning language helps you to see yourself in other. So I will ask Habib this question. Have you ever seen yourself in your students before? Seen yourself in other students who are coming up, starting their language learning journey? Have you seen yourself in them, especially in terms of the mistakes they make and in terms of the struggles that they go through?
Yeah, I think that I have and I have not. That is because I have, because most of the students that I have taught, they kind of have this same characteristic that Matteo and Richland have mentioned. Most of them do not have the willingness to learn a language, maybe because they don't see the importance of language. I am a Ghanaian. What am I going to use Spanish for? Those who have interest do not have that much interest. The interest is there, but they are not willing to sacrifice, to learn, to go beyond and above, to know what they're actually doing, right? So that is one trend that I see in most students. And the other trend is that the other trend that I relate to is that we have a few who really want to give it their all, who want to try their best. They consult teachers, they consult TAs, they become friends with TAs, not because they need any favor from that TA, but because they want that TA to guide them. And all of us have been in that position, right? Where we made TAs our friends, where we are close to them so that they teach us from the wealth of knowledge that they have acquired over the years. So yes, some I kind of relate to, others I do not. But in all, one thing is sure, we have to make sure that if you are learning something, whether it is a language or it's economy, it's whatever, you have the passion for it. You know that it is a continuing, it is built on, and you cannot just learn something today and tomorrow you think that you move to the next level without needing whatever you learned the previous day. So that is one thing that I can see.
Thank you very much. There are just few people who actually want to put in the effort and want to do what they are required to do. I'll ask the same question to Emmanuella. Have you ever seen yourself in your students, looking at some of the struggles you went through in your language learning journey?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, students were always afraid of making mistakes. I mean, when I was a student, I was also afraid of making mistakes. But then one thing that we need to have in mind is that language learning is a journey. It's a journey. So everyone is prone to making mistakes. Mistakes is very natural and it's very normal. So one thing that we have to have in our mind is that language learning is a journey. Just focus on the basics. Focus on the basics and make sure that you get your phrases, everything intact, and you will be good to go. And also, another thing is that they were like, oh, once I know this, I want to speak fluently, like, I mean, within a short period. But it doesn't work like that. As I said earlier, it's a journey. So you have to take your time, you have to learn, you have to study consistently, yes, as Habib said earlier on. So that's something that I like to
Thank
say.
you very much for that. The fear of making mistakes is a very big thing. For that you have mentioned, I'll throw out two questions from what you have just said. The fear of making mistakes. What are some of the most common mistakes that you feel language learners make, and how do you think they can avoid them? Mistakes in class or mistakes in learning a language in general. What are some of the things? I will start with you, Emmanuella. What are some of the things that we feel like are very common mistakes that they make, and how do you think they can avoid them?
Okay, so I will start with since I'm conversant with the French language. For example, you see in French, we always make sure that we go according to gender. I mean, when you are using a noun, and then let's say you have an adjective, it should agree with gender and then a number. So students were always making a mistake of not respecting that rule, especially, and also in the speaking of their language too. One of the most common mistakes that they were making is okay. Let me just go to the pronunciation of I mean some of the words. You see, we have this we call fozami. Yes, and if I mean your first language is English, you are prone to pronouncing the word as you see it. I mean, in the French language, yes. So what I would say is that basically how they can overcome this challenge is just to learn, just to focus, make sure that what you are being taught in class. Since I was a TA, I will use the classroom experience as my example. Focus on what you are being taught in class and just apply the rule, and you will be good to go.
Thank you very much. Just focus on what you are being taught in class. I'll throw the same question to Richland. Common mistakes.
I think, well, the most common mistake I see with my students is it has to do with the verb conjugation. So when you start teaching the verb conjugations, they don't pay enough attention to recognizing the patterns within the verb conjugations. So they end up conjugating it wrongly. And for example, in Spanish like this, if you have to conjugate for the second person singular and you add the S and it's supposed to be the third person and there's no S there, it's wrong. So they don't pay enough attention to those details because mostly the regular verbs have to do with pattern recognition. If you know how to conjugate ER, IR, AR verbs, that means you can conjugate the regular ones, all of them. But then the irregular ones come later, and that's a whole other thing for them. So because they didn't take their time with the pattern recognition for the regular verbs, they now struggle with the irregular verbs and they just end up giving up the whole thing because they think they're not good enough to actually master the verb conjugation. So I think that's one mistake they mostly make. So I make it a point to emphasize that they should focus on the regular verbs because, well, the regular verbs are more than the irregular verbs. So mastering the regular verbs will form a solid basis for them to move on to the irregular verbs. So I think the verb conjugations is where they made the mistake of not paying enough attention.
That's very true, and I agree with the verb conjugation. There's one, so I want to ask a follow-up question on that, Richland. Is it more about the conjugation in paper form or the conjugation in speaking form? Because for me, one thing I've realized is that sometimes they can get it okay, all right, on the paper, but when it comes to the speaking, it doesn't correlate at all. So the conjugation you are talking about, is it the paper, like test conjugation, the one used in sentences or the one spoken orally?
Yeah, so the
So yeah,
verb conjugations have two parts. The normal paper form, as you said, that's the one which is not in context, that they have to recognize the patterns, and the verb conjugations in context. And in my experience, once they know how to conjugate the verbs without the context, that gives them a better chance of applying them within context. Because if from most of the work I've seen them do, when they're able to conjugate the verbs that's on their own without the context, most of them when we put those verbs in context for them to apply, they mostly can get it correct unless they get confused with the pronouns or the person we are referring to. That's the subject of the sentences. But still, they have that solid basis of the verb conjugations which stand alone. So I think mostly that should be the focus, because most of the time to these tests and things, they put indicators, especially for beginners. So they might have some pronouns there which show them that, okay, this is the verb they are supposed to put there, even though they don't fully understand the context of the sentences. So both sides are important, but first they have to know how to conjugate the verbs by themselves. Then they move on to applying the verbs in the context. So they look out for the meaning of the sentences. They look out for indicators, which are the pronouns, or nouns, which help them conjugate the verb appropriately. So I think those are two sides of the same coin that they have to master, but mostly I focus on encouraging them to master the verb conjugations by themselves, because that just has to do with pattern recognition. Then the next step would be applying the verbs in context.
Okay, that's right. Thank you very much. I'll sort of throw kind of different question to Habib. So the question I'm asking is that Richland just made mention of encouraging the students to do this or to do that. There are many times where students have come up to me, they're like, this language thing, I don't think I can do it again. I feel very discouraged. It just feels like I will take eternity to be fluent. Especially some also have some expectations on how long it can take them to be fluent. And in cases where most language learners, even at the beginning, some too, when it gets to a certain point, they're like, bro, this thing, I can't do it again. So what will you tell these people, or what are some strategies that you would encourage for anyone who feels stuck, who feels discouraged already about their language learning journey? Especially look at what Richland was talking about, like conjugation. Some people, once you do the first part of the conjugations for them, the regular, now when they get to the irregular, they're like, this thing is just a whole lot. It's more than I thought it was. You now go and do stem changing before you go to irregular. Then the subjunctive and the other ones have not yet come. So people get discouraged. What would be your strategy for them, Habib?
I think that as students, especially from Ghana and any English-speaking country, I think that our problem is that in English, we do not really have so much of a difference when you are talking about conjugations. So if you are using the verb to do, for example, in the simple past, I did, you did, everyone did. That's it, right? But when you come to Spanish, then you have to think about, well, if it is I, the conjugation is different. If it is you singular, if it is you plural. So that's where the problem begins. And that's why we mentioned that you have to have the passion. Matteo did mention about the willingness to be able to put in the effort to learn. Because if you want to compare it with English, you will think, well, then English is easier. I won't sacrifice. I won't waste my time learning these rules. You made mention of the regular ones, the irregular ones, and some kind of things, right? So the willingness comes back again, the passion for whatever you are doing, right? But whatever be the case, yes, I have gotten students who ask me, Habib, why is it this and not this? Because in English we say this, and I say no. Languages are not compared that way. They have different structures. They have the way they function, different ways, right? So you cannot compare them in that manner. But whatever be the case, right? As students, we should use the language. We should make sure that apart from the conjugations, as Richland mentioned, both alone and in context, you have to make sure that you are using the language. That's one big mistake that we students, especially from Ghana and other English-speaking countries, make. We think that, for example, speaking French would mean that you are from Togo or from Ivory Coast or something like that. That's one. You see, when you look at students who take French at the University of Ghana, when they graduate, just about 2 or 3% are able to express themselves fluently in French, except maybe they are from or they've stayed in one francophone country or something like that. But compare it with what is happening with the Spanish section. Most of the people, majority who graduate in Spanish, they have a certain level of proficiency, right? I don't know the reason. It could be that, well, Spanish students are more proud to use Spanish because the worst people can say about you is that you are from Guinea Equatorial, and that is if they even know that in Guinea Equatorial Guinea, Spanish is spoken there, so they can say that you are from Spain or you are from one Latin American countries, and we have that kind of pride in getting that recognition. But if someone says that you are from Togo, it's like an insult, even though it is not. So yes, let's learn the rules, grammar, conjugation, everything, but also the application of it, using it. You cannot be fluent from a day to the next, right? From one day to the next. Again, in our previous sessions, I've mentioned the fact that people go online and then they see people's captions, be fluent in 3 days, become a native in 3 months, and then they take it as something that is true. It is not true. You cannot speak as a native. Even right now, as master students studying Spanish, we struggle to say some things in our classes. Henrietta, I know you are aware of that because you are also doing your master's. Richland, Matteo, all of us, we are aware of that. It is normal. You are not a native and you can never reach the native proficiency level. But yes, you can express yourself. You can say whatever you want to say using the level that you are on, and people are going to understand your message. And for me, that is the most important.
Thank you very much, Habib. Sorry for trying to cut you off. So it will go off very soon. So I just want to tell us that when it does, kindly rejoin. It's going to cut off very soon. I went off the premium, so it's going to cut off very soon. When it does, please join back out. Sabrina, I also love to have your input on a few things. So if you could also rejoin after the meeting cuts off. Let's see when it does. But I think I really side with what Habib was saying about the fact that Spanish, we are sorry we are being partial here. Maybe Emmanuella can talk for the French people and those who are into the Chinese and the other languages. So as I was saying before, we mostly feel very proud to speak in Spanish, and people are like, hey, where did you learn it? Where did you learn it from? It makes you feel like, oh my God, oh my God. But then if you speak French, like, okay, it's like it has become normal. So but we really wish that those studying French would put in much effort as those who do Spanish do. That enthusiasm, we don't know where it's coming from. Maybe it will be something that we can research on, the researchers on the panel. It can be something that we can research on and see whether Habib's hypothesis is true, and also to see the reasons behind all these things. Okay, so I'll ask ¿cómo se llama? Mateo the next question. This may be the last but one, and then I'll throw the last one to everyone. The hypothesis is that Spanish learners are proud to say that they are learning Spanish, and mostly they are more fluent at the end of the day when they graduate, more than the French students do. So that's the hypothesis. And the research to find out whether it's going to be validated or not. So my question, as I said, is to Matteo. And my question is that what are this do you feel like as a language educator, somebody very knowledgeable in language education, do you feel like there are some techniques for self-study? Every language beginner, self-study. I want to talk for the other people who may not be learning from the class. Oh, sorry. The other people who may not be learning from the classroom or anything. What are the self-study techniques? And then even those who are also in class or learning in class, say at the university or whatever class they are taking, what are some of the techniques for them as beginners?
I think there's a noise in the background.
We're trying to fish out where the noise is coming from. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. First of all, okay. Well, I would go on all the same. I think first of all, I am for the thought that language learning is not just about grammar. Okay, because of course, when we have grammar, it limits you. When we are only focusing on grammar, it limits you to like talk in a particular way. Meanwhile, just look at how we learn French in Ghana. And I mean, for the people who learn French, when you go to Togo, you find out no, people actually don't speak the same. You're like, je m'appelle, comment tu t'appelles, bienvenue, and all the stuff. Sometimes people use bon arrivé, so the grammar it's good, but the overly dependency on grammar really, inhibits our willingness to learn. It is good, let's learn the grammar, but first of all, make sure you break the cycle of fear. For example, I used to, when I started learning Spanish in the University of Ghana, I was like, oh, I I want to like I was very focused on the grades and all, but at the point I just asked myself, okay, so what happens if, let's say, you're done with school, you have all these grades, and you know, and you someone says, oh, Mateo speaks Spanish. Mateo studied Spanish in the University of Ghana. There's a problem. He can solve it, and he goes, I'm like, oh, sorry, I can just write it. I really can't speak. Like, how would you feel, in that sense? So I would say I just really didn't care at the point about my grades. My focus was that I have to make sure, I I learn the language at the end of the day. I'm able to speak. So that really, really helped me because, and also one thing to, Ghana, we have a very communal, relationship where people are almost in everyone's business, because what I usually get like, oh, you're too no. You're like, oh, you want everybody to know you're learning Spanish, and
Yeah.
you want to show. Like, I don't care, just I
Yeah.
really developed that mantra for myself. Like, I don't really care. I don't care, and that really helped me because it actually takes the focus from, you know, thinking of what people are going to say. Because, for example, what really helped me with my Spanish language, I started learning Spanish. No, I think that's French. I started learning French from primary, and I really like loved it so much from JHS and high school. But unfortunately, I really didn't know, I didn't have people to speak it with. There was a tribe in my community, once in a while you get someone who speaks it and you are happy. But I really, got that very vast opportunity when I got to campus, and I had these francophones who were already, also, struggling with their English. So what happened was that, they would speak to me in English and I would reply to them in French. So that was like our code. And I had some 5 good friends, and that really helped me. So always, like, you see, of course English is common in Ghana. So people are like, oh yeah, everyone like, hey, why you speaking French too? No, like, yeah, I don't care. I mean, my parents won't pay this huge amount of Ghana cedis and for me to be like, you know, and that's. But one thing, I want to debunk a little thing. Guys, think out of Ghana. I recently had to travel to Pennsylvania to do something, and at the airport there was a man who was from Cameroon, and of course he was here for some time. He wasn't able to speak. The woman was speaking English, and from the English I could tell this one is French. Is francophone. I was able to help him because I could speak French. So guys, while the language will be very rewarding, just think, you never know, maybe you might have to go somewhere to do something in that language for you to even just say salut or comment ça va, je m'appelle blah blah blah, or qu'est-ce que tu veux. That really saves a lot. And you don't know, 'cause language is just a gateway for us to know, just an endless opportunity. So please don't just think about Ghana, or even if you think you never live in Ghana, there are people who are going to come to Ghana because, a lot of Ghanaians don't really like to speak English, and we don't even like to speak French. There's always tree. But if you can speak French in a particular setting, that really helps you. That really helps you. I would give a classical example. I had an opportunity to work. So this is for Spanish. I had an opportunity to work with historian from Colombia, and there's something called Pan African Festival, where all people people from the diaspora come. So this man happened to be the only Spanish speaker, and this he was speaking in Spanish. No one could translate, so I got the chance to do it. And even though you'd be like, oh, why would I use it? I mean, I'm Ghanaian, why would I use Spanish? But that really came handy. People were like, oh, and way Ghana. Oh, it's very good. Oh, why you are here? All of this. Now, of course, my Spanish was not so perfect, but to a point, the main goal is communication. Let's make sure that learning, because it's just a good tool to have on ground. You never know. So I'd say it is a very good thing. And now, going back to grammar, it is good for us to learn grammar, but if you're not able to say certain things, just find a way around it. Let's say you don't know how to say fork in Spanish. You can say, oh, la cosa que comemos, then use gestures. No,
Yeah.
la cosa que usamos para comer. Now, like, oh, then they help you. With that, we are able to communicate. Then, even as it is going, we get to learn the right word. So, first of all, to summarize everything I've just said, one, make sure you're not really listening to what people are saying. Focus on why you're learning the language. And two, know that it is a potential for you to carry for one day. It is a potential there that you're going to need one day. You never know. And that might be, the opening door for you. So, yeah, please don't care what people are going to say, because people always have opinions. But think, at the end of the language, like, oh, come and help this person. I don't understand his language. And you're like, oh, I can't really speak, that would be really, really shameful. So think about it. The goal is communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very insightful, Matteo. I think I share the same thing, where sometimes it gets to a point you feel like people are going to say you're very too new, but Charlie, it's you know your goals that you've set for yourself. Whatever you do to be able to speak, that is you. Whether you have to be loud. Some people are very quiet, they study their books, they will not talk anywhere. Look at Habib and Richland, very quiet, but they'll be doing very well. Some people too, they are very loud. So however you feel like you do it and then it will work for you, do it that way. Then also there was one time I sat, the same experience. I sat in a bus at the airport, those kind of what do you call it? What is it, shuttle or subway? And there
Yeah.
was this woman holding a poster like this in what do you call it? In English. She doesn't know where to go. So I was like, what's language? What's language? And then they said French. Then I started telling them, oh, so when the subway reaches here, go pass here, pass here, pass here. They were very happy, merci beaucoup, merci. And so I even asked myself, if you are showing the sign to someone, but how can the person even explain to you in English that, because if you don't understand the English, how can they even show you where to go? That's the importance of learning languages. On their part, they don't have the English. On my part, I have the French. So language will go a long way to helping you. I want to, at this point, give the chance to the attendees. If anyone has any question, please try as much as possible to make it more general, so that any of the panelists can be able to answer questions.
Is Spanish monetarily rewarding?
Okay.
I think I should go first. Absolutely. I think it is, but it depends on wherever you are. I feel combining Spanish with something else really helps you, okay? Because let's say it depends really on the market, and when you get the chance, it's really, really rewarding. Because, for example, when I was in school, I used to get these little gigs, and no, let me speak currently. So at the University of Missouri, I really had an opportunity to work with the College of Health. So they wanted to just access, the state of maternal and child health, in the state of Missouri, where we were. However, of course, I don't have any medical or health background, but with the language, I was able to, get into that space, and it really got me that very experience. So, of course, I got some cash that sustained me for some time, though. But I feel, looking at how things are going now, it's good to always combine language with something, combine it with business, have some business somewhere, and have, anything that really helps you. So the language comes as an addition, unless you want to be like a professor, you want to be a translator, fine. But even with those ones, the economists would call their seasonal employment with languages, because of course they would need translators when there's a conference or there is something, or maybe when you have an opportunity to work with maybe ECOWAS or all of these international organization. With that one, there's a constant demand for that. But I can tell you for sure that it puts you a step above the others if you have a second language. That one is for sure.
Thank you very much. The other panelists, any other? There are more questions here that I will ask. Okay.
Hetty, yeah. So I would like to add more to what a little, sorry, about what Matteo said. Now, yes, you want to learn a language because you want to work and then yes, earn money. But I would want to say that don't focus on the money. I mean, at the initial stage as a beginner, or yes, since we are more concerned about beginners, don't focus more on maybe, yes, I want to learn French because I want to work with France embassy so that I can start earning money. No, because just be grounded in the language, okay, in your target language. Be more grounded, so that, because nobody would want to work with someone who is just not so good in quotes in the target language. So that is something little that I wanted to add to what Matteo said.
Thank you very much. Just be good in whatever you want to learn. In as much as the money is good. The languages have lots of opportunities. Money there, it will come. The money there, it will come. Okay, Gabriela, can you ask your question? Then I can take the ones in the comment section.
Okay, mine isn't really a question. It was about something you mentioned earlier, why the French learners aren't that fluent like the Spanish learners at the end of the course. So I've had a chance to be in both Spanish and French classes. Even as at level 100, we had a whole course for orals, and we had a native teacher, as in, I don't know if she was from Spain but then she wasn't Ghanaian, she was white, and definitely from a country whose mother tongue is Spanish. And she took us to, I only did a year with Spanish, but I can tell you for a fact that I still remember some expressions. And even when I watch some Spanish movies, I want to keep learning the language. So sometimes when I watch the movies, I don't change the language to English. I still watch them in Spanish and then use English subtitles so I could get it. And I'm able to understand some of the things even before I read the subtitles. I still remember a few expressions like sueteme and co, and it's nice. But I feel like with French, even though we have courses that have oral in them, there is little to no focus on building up the students' oral expression. We barely have presentations where everybody gets to express himself or herself. Mostly those who are good, as of level 300 and 400, those who have gone for a year, but mostly they will do the talking, and then those who cannot speak well like they do will just keep quiet and then listen. So it's only a few people that are being built up, and then the rest are kind of left behind. So I would blame how the oral classes are handled in both courses. Yeah.
I think I want to say something before you move to other people. Gabriela, thank you so much for bringing that up, because of course I also went to the University of Ghana, and I think that goes down to the very big size of our French classes. Of course, that really happens most of the time. But I can tell you that for sure. Compare a school like University of Ghana and Ashesi. They're all very good schools, but the population. So there's not a one-to-one, teacher focus on a student. But I can tell you that for sure that even though, University of Ghana is a premier university, but for you to be a distinguished student, you need to like take that very initiative. Be like, no, I mean, I have to make sure. So of course, I would really, because I also personally complain about the way our French classes are really handled, because there is overly focus on writing and grammar, and just less room. Even I can't tell a book that unless maybe you get to 300 where you're doing, let's say, literature that you get to read. But I would really have appreciated if we could learn, like, read some books, because of course we enter French with some level of French from high school. So read a book in, let's say, level 100 or level 200, simple books though. But I mean, it goes down to everyone. Make sure that you're taking that very bold step to make it work for yourself. Find your motivator. If it is music, make sure you listen to the music over and over again. There's one thing I wanted to say. Like, first of all, make sure while you're learning the language, just let's say someone is speaking Frafra, for example, around you. You'd be like, what language is this? You get frustrated. I cannot understand this. The same thing also happens with, Spanish and French. Just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I will say that again. Just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, just you're hearing the language you don't really understand. Just try and just sit with the comfort. If you're able to like be comfortable in that, I can tell you for sure you're on a good path to learning the language. So make sure you take extra steps, because of course at the end of the day the teacher is going to get paid and everything, but you are paying your school fees. So make sure you are getting the most out of it.
Right, that's true. Make sure you are getting the most out of it. Before we take the next question, Sabrina wants to leave, but we'll give her a chance to tell us anything that she can tell us about what she feels that every language, learner needs to know, and then also if there are some self techniques that someone can decide to use, especially those who are not learning at school, and they can be able to use to learn. Sabrina.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Just that the voice is down small, but
Oh, sorry. I'm very glad to see my old colleagues and some of my how do you call them? People that I tutored, and it's very
yeah,
nice.
your students. I was your
How
student.
your journey so far with the language. So good. Yeah. So my first point is that do not rush the process. You get just as you start making anything, everything that you are making has its own processing time. So when you are learning a language, don't rush it. It's true, there are people that when we all entered the University of Ghana, we are ahead of us, but now we all communicate at the same level. I had colleagues that they had prior knowledge to the language, both French and Spanish. I did French, Spanish, and linguistics. So they had knowledge on both sides. So you can imagine the tension. They were speaking in class, outside the class, and the pressure wasn't easy, but we made it. Yes, we trusted the process, and then we allowed nature to take its course. So one thing I realized was the French and Spanish debate. I would say that sometimes, you see, with the French language, majority of us are coming from secondary schools, and we studied French, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've studied French in JHS, SHS, and to study something, a language for that long, and we don't see that much improvement due to their cake teaching method. We get bored because they are like, university again. And then the French department, I'm speaking on behalf of University of Ghana, they also assume that these people already know French. So how Spanish takes its time to build the language with you step by step, I didn't see it in the French class. So for me to drop one course by the end of level 100 was a no-brainer. People were shocked. Why don't you combine French, Spanish? I was like, nah, I'm not doing French. No, I can't go through this process again. So that's one thing. So if someone belongs to the French department, they can talk to them. So they revise their method. Yes. And then what's the other question you asked? The last question, and then I'll go.
The self techniques that someone can use. Those who don't, maybe they are not in the university learning.
One thing that helped me. I was very terrible. I'm like, please don't be fooled by my this. I was very terrible, level 100, level
A
50. I believe that
valedictorian.
what changed? You see, as my friend Matteo was saying, that writing is different from speaking. What shifted the gear for me was study abroad. And I'll say that study abroad does not make you speak it better, but it will boost your confidence. It boosts your confidence. So there are people that go for a year abroad and then they come back and you don't see any difference. TSM Henrietta, she didn't go for a year abroad, but Henrietta can speak, and you can see the effort that she applies. You go to the staff room and then you can see that there's someone who's making an effort, and she's intentional even about the accent, acquiring the accent. And she has not been to Spain or Mexico or Colombia or any other country. And the effort she's putting into it. So don't put it in your head that you have to go for a year abroad. Well, when you're sick, so you may not qualify for the year abroad, but don't create the impression that because I didn't go, so I can't speak it, or because I don't find myself in a Spanish country, I can't speak. There are people who learn Spanish through telenovelas. There's a guy, he's a medical doctor right now.
Yeah.
He studied, I believe you guys know him.
Yeah.
He studied Spanish through novelas. So you have to find what works for you. What worked for me may not work for you. So you have to also look at all the aspects. Okay, some are saying Duolingo, some are saying listen to more music, some are saying join Spanish. Now we have a Spanish community here in Ghana. So you can join a Spanish community and look at all the various aspects, what works for you, and then pick it, and then you go from me. What worked for me, I realized later on in my journey, was being part of a community that speaks the language, because I already had the knowledge of it. But my issue was how to bring it out. That was my only issue. So in Spain, you can talk to other people. They realized that I was working more with Henkel, because Henkel was way ahead of us. So Henkel would then put you in situations where you have to use whatever you. So challenge yourself. As I said, don't be scared to make a mistake. Of course, you want to be perfect? No, you make the mistakes, and then trust me, 5 years, 6 years down the line, you are on their level and then having conversations with them. Thank you very much.
Thank
I hope
you so much.
I've made sense.
So much sense. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for adding your voice. So Sabrina was a valedictorian for which year was that, Cry? Those who graduated in 2022, I guess. Yeah. So you see, Spanish people are producing valedictorians. Habib was also a valedictorian. If you want, if you want to be a valedictorian, study Spanish and graduate with Spanish. Don't drop Spanish. That's my advice to you. Anyway, that was a joke. So thank you so much, Sabrina. Even though you were not on the panel, you've also contributed immensely to this seminar. Thank you so much. Celine, your hand is up.
Okay, as a Spanish learner, I find it difficult sometimes to make sentences using articles, and so I want to know how that works too. Thank you.
Okay, I think this question Habib can take it.
Okay, so she wants to know how forming sentences work, right?
Celine, is that your question?
Yes, alongside the articles, like fitting articles into the sentence, like el pelo largo. Why does the L have to be there?
Okay. I get it. Okay, so first of all, I think that where the problem is that in English, you wouldn't need an article. Not necessarily, right? But in Spanish, almost always you need an article, right? Los chicos hablan. In English, you would say the students speak, right? But there are cases where you wouldn't need an article in English, but in Spanish, almost always you need an article. But one thing I want you to know is that Spanish structure or Spanish syntax, I mean, I'm referring to the combination of the different parts of a sentence, is flexible, right? In English, the subject, unless it is maybe a poem, and you are trying to be creative with the language, right? You use the subject first, then the verb, then the object, whatever follows, whether direct or indirect, right? But in Spanish, it is flexible. You can say habla, el estudiante, or el estudiante habla. It's really flexible. So that is one thing that has to do with the syntax of Spanish versus the syntax of English. Why do we have to use the article de? It's a difficult question, but I said that languages function differently, right? They function differently. In Spanish, that's a requirement. I remember this week, one student was asking me that, why is it that Spanish, we always do this and we don't do it in English? And I said, every language has the way it works, right? For example, in Arabic, you wouldn't start with a subject, you rather start with a verb. So goes Habib to school. That's how it will work. So every language has got its structure. There's no explanation as to why do I need the le or the l or the la, or in French, why do I need le or whatever. That's how it works for them. A noun, right, sustantivo in Espanol, should be preceded by either a definite or an indefinite article, right? Respecting the gender and the number that the noun is in, right? The form of the noun. So that's how it works. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but the comparison of why is it that English, I don't need de, but Spanish, I need de. I think that it just has to do with the language type and how that language functions. So that's one thing you have to learn. Know that always in Spanish, I will need an article. Always, I will need an article. But in English, there are instances where you are talking about something mostly general. You don't necessarily have to use the article.
Thank you very much. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Every language has its truth, so you just have to accept it. If you don't accept it, you always have questions. Just accept that that's how the language is, and then go by the rules of the language. Let's try also to make it less specific, so that those in I'm seeing some people who are studying Russian and others. Please, no matter the language you are studying, you can ask a question. Our panelists are very knowledgeable on language learning in general. We have Matteo, for example, who is studied like language teaching. So, and most of them have taught language. So they really have knowledge and have also studied other languages apart from French and Spanish. So they really have knowledge on other languages. So no matter the language, the question that you have, you can ask and they will answer. I will take, and our time is fast spent. I don't know whether we'd want to come back again, but there are several questions here. Someone asked, I'll ask Richland this question. I think the question was directed to me, but I'll ask Richland. The person says, has learning a foreign language affected your good English in any way, or it doesn't really change anything? Richland.
I don't think it's well, I would say that learning a different language has helped me understand the English language system more, because some words which have their origin in Latin, if you understand it in Spanish, you can easily know the meaning in English as well, because the languages borrow from one another. So it has had a positive impact on my English. It doesn't negatively affected the way I speak English in any way, because English is my second language. So I've been learning this since I was in like nursery, crèche. We used English in school all the time. So the probability of picking up another language at this age affecting your English negatively is very, very, very low. So I don't see any negative implications of language learning on your English. It's only positive ones I see.
I
Hetty,
also want to add, when you're
I want to add. Oh,
Okay.
Matteo, go ahead.
well, there is something called, bilingualism. There is a course I've done here. It's called bilingualism. We have different types of bilingualism. We have subtractive bilingualism. We have recursive and all. I can tell you that for sure. There are times where, I'm saying things in English, but basically just like literal translation. So we have something called competence versus performance. Sometimes, because you're stressed, your performance is not really, it's not really, you're not able to just speak the language. It's going to affect it one way or the other. But make sure that you are focused on what you're doing, because definitely, just like Richland said, we have Foza me. For example, embarazada in Spanish, of course, is not embarrassed, but in Italian it means embarrassed. It is different. So just like it adds, it subtracts. So it depends on the situation. And for the people who learn other languages and Russian and all that, I can tell you that for sure, all the principle goes all around. It goes all around, it cuts across. So make sure that you're focused on what you're doing, and make sure that it's going to affect it one way or the other, but just have a conscious effort and look at what you're looking for at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
And
Yeah,
30,
Habib.
please, 30 seconds. I was going to say the same thing as Matteo said, because in linguistics, just like Matteo mentioned, you talk about competency, and we have something we call competencia linguistica, and that is linguistic competency, and it can be cyclic, right? It can go round. So it says that at a specific point, whatever language you like using a lot, you tend to gain more competence in that language. It doesn't mean that it is affecting the other one, that you are not good at that one. Let's say, so if you are using Spanish, just like we are studying Spanish, we tend to be more distant in Spanish, more prone to using Spanish in our speech, or we feel more comfortable using Spanish in our speech than English. It doesn't mean that your English is going bad. The moment you start using more and more Spanish, you see that you still have the English. So it doesn't get bad, but it's just that because you are using this one more, you tend to be more in that one. You tend to have the tendency to use that one more.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I will what's her name? I'll come back to Emmanuella on the next question. I'll ask Emmanuella on that. I don't know how I can save these ones that are here before it goes off. We'll be here when it goes, when we are logged out. Please kindly log in, and then we can wrap up, because time is fast spent. But I want to juxtapose this whole thing with also some people, they come to America and then they say they have forgotten their tree. For most people, it's true, actually. I know someone who got married to a white man, and when she starts speaking the tree, the English takes over. So although she's a native tree speaker, and as Habib said, it's not about the fact that maybe her tree has gotten bad. It's just about her using so much of one language to the fact that she doesn't use the other. But for us, we still use English. Wherever you go, you are still using English. So there is not really any you for saying that if you are studying two languages, for those of us who are doing more Spanish and we are not doing French again, that one you can say it's affected. But once we are more or less like almost native language English speakers, it doesn't really affect, since we are still in the process of using the English regularly. Emmanuel, I'll ask this question. So the question says that, does getting the basics in French make it easier as time goes on? I don't know if when you're answering and go at the cuts, we will come back. And then we can wrap it up since time is fast spent.
So can I get the question again?
So someone is asking, when you get the basics of French, does it make language learning easier?
Okay, so I would say yes, because I mean, it makes it easier for you to start speaking the language in your daily conversation. That is why when you come to level 100, we start with I've forgotten the name of the course exactly, but then it's more like basic stuff, like, for example, greetings, for example, date, time, and all those things. Like you use it in your daily conversations. I mean, yes. So it makes it very, very easy, because and also you cannot jump you cannot jump from You cannot skip the basics because I mean, what exactly are you going to learn without learning the basics? Do you understand? Yes. So always focusing more on the basics makes it easier as time goes on. As time goes on, you get used to it and then you advance. Yeah. So that's what I can say.
Thank you very much. So focus on the basics. Once you get the basics, the other panelists also made mention of that language is a build-up. I think that's the first thing Richland made mention. It's a build-up. So whatever you learn, you build up on that. The time is up. We will come back and then wrap it up, but we can give room for 2 more questions. So if you have any more questions, please you ask and then we can bring the seminar to an end. Anyone who has a question, please, when you come back.